You know what happened 112 years ago today, Mr. Producer? Neither do I. No idea. I haven't looked it up. I'm corny, I know. I have these corny jokes. It kind of drives my family nuts, especially my wife. I'll walk into a restaurant nowhere near an ocean, and I'll say to the person seating us, may I have an ocean view? Now, either the real... What's that? Dad, is that what those are? Dad jokes? So people either really laugh or they look at me and say, there's no ocean here. Oh, okay. Things of that sort. Got a lot of them. Most of them are corny, but that's the way it goes. Harmless. Even though hire me for a progressive commercial, but I want nothing to do with it because it's called Progressive and it's left wing and they're friends with Clinton, the insurance company, you know. Well, there's a lot to talk about, and I want to talk about a lot, but there's also things that I want to talk about that are not in the news, but that are important. And that's the nature of the beast when it comes to this platform, which I love so much. And I truly do. And it's because of you folks. It's really appointment radio because, let's be honest, the time of this program kind of sucks, doesn't it? 6 to 9 p.m. Eastern Time, particularly for those in the Eastern Time Zone. But here I be. Or here I be at. Nonetheless, I've been doing this a long time, so it's a time zone, or I should say a time slot that we own, and I want to thank all of you for that. We're talking a lot about this guy, Mamdani. Everybody is. He's a avowed Marxist. We've talked about Bernie Sanders and AOC and Tlaib and Omar, Marxist Islamists. It is a growing cancer within the Democrat Party and in our society, despite what people are saying and thinking. Do you realize, ladies and gentlemen, 27 members of the Senate, Democrats, voted against any military aid for the state of Israel? They did it twice. That's more than half of the Senate Democrats. Which means they're effectively voting for Hamas, Iran, the Houthis, Hezbollah, the terrorists. How else can you explain it? And, of course, any amount of evidence, and it's overwhelming, that demonstrates that Hamas is starving the Palestinians, that they're doing it as a desperate last effort to hold on to power, and it's having a major propaganda effect with the hard left, our media, and these grotesque so-called influencers. They're running with this stuff, and they're not going to be dissuaded. And you and I have never seen anything like this before in our lives, nothing. And we're going to push back, and we're going to fight back. We don't roll over. That's this whole Marxism thing. I spent a lot of time on this and on power, as I did in American Marxism, but here I applied it quite differently. I hope those of you who have the book, have had a chance to read it, are enjoying it. You can go on Amazon if you got it there and leave your opinions and let other people know what you think. You can call into this program as well. We're not hiding anything. We're happy to discuss everything. We're getting excellent reviews. I really want to thank everybody out there who's jumping in, or who's getting them as gifts and so forth. But I want to start with this because it kind of provides the basis for where we go with this program almost every day. Because this is a constant battle. Even when you look at the news, what's the battle? The battle's over power. When you look at what they did to Trump, what Obama and Hillary did with Russia collusion, how outrageous that was a battle over power. That's what we call negative power. And that's what we call authoritarian democracy, which is what the Democrats have become, authoritarian Democrats. I point out the Marxist utopia state and most other autocratic utopian states, or states of utopia, promised by power-hungry masterminds and revolutionaries, is, if you think about it, complete nonsense. Marx's writings, along with his partner Engels, are dripping with arrogance and anger, as well as absolute certainty and pomposity. Even a cursory examination of Marxism's application in one country and society after another proves it to be nothing more than an elaborate maze of absurdities and distortions about humanity, the impossibility of which has resulted in the misery and death of tens of millions. Stanford University professor Robert Berman explains that Marxism was never about achieving an egalitarian society. It It was about the pursuit of raw power. While for others, politics represents a realm of compromise and negotiation, for Marx, it was really the pursuit of power and the obligation of command. Now, I dug this up after a ton of research. I had not known this excellent professor before at Stanford and his excellent writings, but obviously I became acquainted with him. And he goes on. He described the state simply as the executive committee of the bourgeoisie, meaning that politics was secondary to the economy. Moreover, he promised to abolish the state and therefore politics, since communism would eliminate class differences. So the story went. To the ultimate outcome of communism would be a liberation utopia of statelessness. But nothing, however, would be further from the truth. In practice, what communism provided for was the development of a new class elite, which talked the egalitarian talk while claiming for itself the privilege of dictators. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I coined this. I invent a phrase to describe this as the new bourgeoisie. That is, rather than wealth being a determinant of the ruling class, it's just power. The new bourgeoisie is power. He goes on, the communist cadre always knew better than the unenlightened populace, and therefore the cadre would claim the power to impose their views and programs on the rest of society. The real political legacy of Marxism was not the abolition of the state, but on the contrary, the expansion of the state over society, and the elevation of Marxist elite over the populace, or as I've written for 20-some years, they devour the society with centralized government. Society and the culture are devoured and controlled. So as I point out, given all we know about Marxism in particular and autocracies generally, and the imposition of what I call negative power to destroy individual and societal rights and liberties, it is deeply distressing that for so many, including Democrat Party politicians and officials, broad aspects of Marxism are more prominent, if not central, in their mindset than Americanism and the essential principles of our country's founding. Now, to understand this contemporary reality is to comprehend the nature and worsening divide in our country and the profound political and social disputes in which we find ourselves. For the ruling class and its hunger for power, the American way is not satisfactory or fulfilling. The entire construct of individual sovereignty, unalienable individual rights, natural law, and so forth, and a government that is limited, divided, and representative, restrains and suppresses powers that the ruling class craves. The negative power of Marxism is the polar opposite of the positive power of republicanism. Now, for the American Marxists, the source of rights is mankind, and not mankind writ large, but a faction of men who seize power in the name of impossible fantasies and mental inventions. So the struggle is over who defines and assigns rights. Obviously, this is in the chapter on rights. Ultimately, and despite theories and ideologies to the contrary, they conclude that the power over rights, and hence the power over the individual and society, rests in whom controls government. Therefore, in modern parlance, the end game is not social justice, environmental justice, economic justice, equity, and all the rest, but raw power. The rest is nothing more than propaganda in pursuit of that power. Is that not the true end of all autocratic regimes? Power. It is certainly true of Marx's view of rights, and power from which individual rights and liberties are said to flow is an illegitimate power. That is, nothing more than a bourgeois contrivance and device. Therefore, the society and all that underlies and sustains it must be abolished. Now, for the American Marxists, the means is the relentless war on the nation's founding and founders, American history, the Constitution and the law, freedom of speech, the family, the culture, faith, and economic system, ours, capitalism. It is a real and focused whole-of-society counter-revolution. Think about Mondani and others. Think about Sanders. Therefore, it is essential that they secure power inside or as the ruling class where they plot to hold governmental power as long as they can and pass it to succeeding generations of like-minded ideologues. The way they change the voting systems, the way they use prosecutors, the way they use judges. They're unwilling to abrogate their power at the whimsy of the voter, even when and if they go through the motions of surrendering elective office to a victor outside the ruling class. Hence the overarching importance of an omnipresent administrative state and an unelected judiciary to protect it, it being the permanent government. They are at first agencies of resistance, usurpation, and sabotage against the existing society. But eventually, as the power of the American Marxists proliferates and effectuates, it moves from the revolutionary phase to the coercion phase, increasingly taking on the characteristics of a police state. Now, just a side comment. These words are crucially important. They are critical. They're imperative. It may be that this is a book for 100 years from now. I don't know. None of us will be around. I really wish and hope it's a book for now. So it's not a book for people looking back and figuring out what happened to America, how it faltered, how it destroyed itself, but rather we, the people today, taking these words, embracing this book, and addressing it now. I go on in the rights chapter. Again, the consent of the governed and representative government via elections becomes more illusion than reality, and honored and legitimized only if the governed consent to the will of the ruling class, the will of the ruling class. Indeed, this, for the people, the working people, language, as well as their class warfare and justice-seeking declarations, are intended to deceive and manipulate. The instincts of the American Marxists are authoritarian, pure and simple. Their followers, like the rest of the people, are treated as dupes, with negative language, including righteous-sounding but self-serving propaganda. To control the government is to control the distribution and enforcement, or non-enforcement, of rights. Not God-given unalienable rights, of course, but so-called economic and social rights, which are considered the only rights that are said to matter, at least at first. The government must define these rights, since the individual, the people, are considered incapable of it through their own actions and associations. The government can assign and deny economic rights and otherwise exploit and wield them in the name of the greater cause. Those who object to the denial of individual and economic rights or otherwise stand in the way must be made to conform or face public and societal ridicule or worse. This supposed progress is, of course, inevitable, or at least while must appear to be. Shangri-La is always said to be within reach, if only the ruling class has more power and the individual less. And the individual less. The extent to which not only Woodrow Wilson, Democrat, but later Franklin Roosevelt, the most revered and celebrated Democrat Party presidents and leaders, borrowed from the Hegelian and Marx concept of rights is indisputable. It's indisputable. Indeed, on January 11, 1944, FDR issued his second Bill of Rights. As you read it, compare it to Stalin's 1936 Constitution, which is also in the book. And the economic similarities are obvious. Now, we're going to take a short break, but I do want to continue, because I think it's important, and I'm trying to encourage you and persuade you to acquire your own copy of On Power so you can read this and tons more, as we, as a free people for now, try and work our way through this. It's important that we share our ideas and that our ideas really are relevant and important. That's the point of this book, On Power.